Everything you hate about your life right now is the direct result of avoiding necessary suffering. Your unfulfilling job, your shallow relationships, your unrealized dreams, all consequences of choosing what feels good over what causes growth. The most dangerous prayer you could ever pray is, make my life easy. Because easy lives produce weak people. And weak people cannot carry out great purposes. Your comfort zone isn't where you were designed to live. It's where dreams go to die. The room you're sitting in right now is filled with two types of people. Some of you came here because someone dragged you along. You're physically present, but your mind is elsewhere. You're checking the time, wondering when this will be over so you can get back to your comfortable life. The others, you came searching for something. There's a hunger in you, a dissatisfaction with where you are. You know, deep down, that you were meant for more. But here's what both groups have in common. You're all running from pain. Every single day, we make decisions based on avoiding discomfort. We choose the easy path, the convenient option, the road most traveled. And that's precisely why most people never become who they were designed to be. Your potential is being buried under the weight of your comfort. Have you ever watched a butterfly emerge from its cocoon? It's a violent process. The butterfly must struggle, must suffer to build the strength needed for flight. If you, with kind intentions, cut open that cocoon to help the butterfly, you condemn it to death. It will never fly. The very struggle you tried to spare it from was the essential preparation for its purpose. You are that butterfly, and your cocoon is comfort. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you did something that terrified you? When did you last push beyond what felt safe? When did you deliberately choose the harder path? Most people spend their entire lives avoiding suffering. They run from pain as if it were their greatest enemy, never realizing it might be their greatest teacher. The most dangerous prayer you could ever pray is, make my life easy. Because easy lives produce weak people. And weak people cannot carry out great purposes. Success is not the absence of problems, it's the presence of purpose powerful enough to overcome those problems. Look at your hands for a moment. Go ahead. Look at them. These hands were not given to you merely to grasp what is comfortable. They were given to you to build what is necessary. Your comfort zone is not where you were designed to live. It's merely where you were designed to rest. Maybe, but somehow, we've turned our rest stops into permanent residences. The question I want to plant in your mind today is simple but uncomfortable. Are you suffering enough for your future? Not suffering as in needless pain or self-destruction. I'm talking about the deliberate, purposeful choice to embrace difficulty for the sake of growth. The gym provides the perfect metaphor. Nobody goes to the gym hoping for an easy workout. The entire purpose is control suffering. You deliberately tear muscle fiber so it can rebuild stronger. You intentionally put yourself through discomfort because you understand the relationship between temporary pain and lasting improvement. Your life works the same way. Growth happens at the edge of discomfort. Consider this, everything you want is on the other side of suffering. On financial freedom. It's on the other side of fiscal discipline and delayed gratification. Meaningful relationships. They're on the other side of vulnerability and difficult conversations. Purpose and impact. They're on the other side of responsibility and sacrifice. Your dream career is on the other side of rejection. Failure and relentless work. The problem is that we've been sold a lie. We've been told that if something is difficult, we must be doing it wrong. That pain is always bad. That struggle means we've made a mistake. Nothing could be further from the truth. The most worthwhile things in life are difficult. They demand your sweat, your tears, your sleepless nights. They require you to suffer. But here's the beautiful paradox. When you choose to suffer for something meaningful, it transforms from misery into fulfillment. There's a vast difference between suffering that happens to you and suffering you choose for a purpose. Have you noticed how the same people who complain about working an extra hour at a job they hate will happily spend 12 hours climbing a mountain on vacation? The difference isn't the exertion, it's the purpose behind it. Purpose transforms suffering from burden to privilege. I recently spoke with someone who had lost everything. His business collapsed. His marriage ended. His health failed. He hit rock bottom. But he told me something profound the day I stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started asking, what is this preparing me for? Was the day my life began to change. That shift in perspective changes everything. Your suffering is not meaningless unless you make it so. Every hardship you face is either a weight that crushes you or a weight that trains you. The difference is not in the weight itself, but in how you carry it. Some of you right now are avoiding the very suffering that would lead to your breakthrough. You're running from the resistance that would build your strength. You're dodging the challenges that would develop your character. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you're trading your future for your present. Every time you opt for easy over effective, you're selling your potential for temporary relief. Every time you pick convenient over challenging, you're sacrificing who you could become for who you currently are. In nature, nothing valuable comes easily. Diamonds form under extreme pressure. Gold is purified by fire. Pearls emerge from irritation within the oyster. You are no different. Your greatest strengths will emerge from your greatest struggles. Your most profound wisdom will come from your most painful experiences. Your unique contribution to the world will flow from the challenges only you have faced. But this can only happen if you stop running from suffering and start using it. Here's a truth that might change your life. The quality of your future is determined by the difficulty you're willing to endure today. Not difficulty for its own sake, not suffering as some form of self-punishment, but the deliberate choice to embrace challenge for the sake of becoming. I want you to think about something that's been challenging you lately. Maybe it's a strained relationship, a financial setback, a health crisis, a career obstacle. Now, I want you to mentally reframe it. What if this challenge isn't happening to you, but for you? What if it's not an obstacle to your purpose, but preparation for it? The most dangerous moment in your life is when everything is comfortable, because comfort breeds complacency, and complacency is the enemy of growth. There's an ancient wisdom that says smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. You cannot become who you're meant to be without facing storms that force you to adapt, to learn, to become stronger. Think about the people you most admire. Did they have easy lives, or did they face tremendous challenges and choose to use those challenges as fuel? Every great story of transformation includes suffering. Every tale of triumph includes tribulation. Every journey to purpose passes through pain. The question is not whether you will suffer. The question is whether your suffering will be random and meaningless or chosen and purposeful. Will you suffer the pain of discipline or the pain of regret? Will you suffer the temporary discomfort of growth or the permanent disappointment of stagnation? Will you suffer the challenge of change or the despair of remaining the same? These are the choices that shape not just your day, but your destiny. I meet too many people waiting for life to get easier before they pursue their purpose. They say, when I have more time, when I have more money, when the kids are grown, when I retire. But if you wait for all obstacles to disappear before you begin, you will wait forever. The obstacles are not in your way. They are your way. The resistance you feel is not your enemy. It's your training ground. The discomfort you experience is not a warning to retreat. It's an invitation to advance. Look at your life right now. Where are you choosing comfort over growth? Where are you picking easy over effective? Where are you settling for less to avoid the suffering of striving for more? Your answers to these questions reveal where your future is being compromised. I want to challenge you, make yourself suffer purposefully, strategically, deliberately for the sake of who you're becoming. Choose the harder conversation that leads to a healthier relationship. Choose the disciplined budget that leads to financial freedom. Choose the consistent effort that leads to meaningful achievement. Choose the difficult boundaries that lead to genuine respect. Choose the personal responsibility that leads to unlimited potential. We live in a culture obsessed with comfort. Every advertisement promises to make your life easier, more convenient, less demanding. But have you noticed? The easier life becomes externally, the weaker we become internally. The more we automate, the less we actualize, the more we delegate, the less we develop. And there's a direct correlation between the rise in convenience and the decline in character. The more society optimizes for comfort, the more individuals surrender their potential. There's a story about an elderly man who noticed a small hole in his cocoon one morning. Inside, he could see a butterfly struggling to emerge, moved with compassion. He took scissors and carefully cut open the cocoon, freeing the butterfly immediately. But instead of flying away in gratitude, the butterfly fell to the ground. Its wings were shriveled and useless. What the man didn't understand was that the very struggle he tried to eliminate was essential for the butterfly's development. The resistance of pushing through the tiny opening would have forced fluid from the butterfly's body into its wings, preparing them for flight. His well-intended intervention became an unwitting cruelty. By removing the struggle, he removed the butterfly's ability to fulfill its purpose. How many of us have been similarly crippled by well-intended comfort? How many of us have been robbed of our strength by the absence of necessary struggle? The painful truth is that many of you sitting here today are like butterflies with undeveloped wings. You have everything needed to soar, but you've been denied, or worse, you've denied yourself the essential resistance that would develop your capacity to fly. The greatest disservice you can do to yourself is to avoid the suffering that would strengthen you. When you run from resistance, you run from growth. When you escape challenge, you escape transformation. When you evade difficulty, you evade development. The very things you're avoiding are precisely what would prepare you for your purpose. Consider for a moment those periods in your life when you experience the most growth. Were they comfortable times? Were they easy seasons? Or were they moments of challenge, pressure, and yes, suffering? For most of us, our greatest growth emerged from our greatest trials. Our deepest insights came through our deepest pain. Our most significant strength developed during our most significant struggles. And yet, knowing this truth, we still organize our lives around the elimination of discomfort. We still make decisions based primarily on what will hurt least rather than what will help most. We still choose pathways based on their promise of ease rather than their potential for growth. What if we've been getting it all wrong? What if the very suffering we've been avoiding is the doorway to everything we've been seeking? What if the resistance we keep running from is actually the resistance we need to push against to develop our strength? The law of growth is universal. Capacity develops through challenge. Yet muscles grow by pushing against resistance. Immune systems strengthen through exposure to pathogens. Emotional resilience builds through facing difficulties. Intellectual ability expands by wrestling with complex problems. Nothing in nature develops without appropriate challenge. Nothing grows in a vacuum of comfort. You've been designed with remarkable adaptive capacity. When placed under pressure, you don't just survive, you transform. When faced with obstacles, you don't just endure, you evolve. But this capacity remains dormant until activated by challenge. Your potential lies sleeping until awakened by suffering. I want you to think about the areas in your life where you've been seeking relief when you should have been seeking growth. Where have you been praying for escape when you should have been praying for endurance? Where have you been looking for shortcuts when you needed the long journey? Perhaps it's in your work where you've been seeking the path of least resistance rather than the path of most development. Perhaps it's in your relationships where you've been avoiding difficult conversations instead of engaging in the constructive conflict that leads to deeper connection. Perhaps it's in your personal growth where you've been making excuses instead of making progress. The uncomfortable truth is that your comfort zone is your danger zone. It feels safe, but it's silently sabotaging your future. It promises protection but delivers stagnation. Your comfort zone is where dreams go to die, not dramatically, but gradually, day by comfortable day. As you settle for less than you were designed to become. There's a reason why ships aren't built to stay in the harbor. There's a reason why eagles' nests are built on cliffs rather than on the ground. There's a reason why seeds must be buried before they can grow. Safety, while necessary at times, is not our natural habitat for growth. You were built for challenge. You were designed for difficulty. You were created to overcome. But here's something crucial to understand. Not all suffering leads to growth. There's destructive suffering that damages without developing. There's needless suffering that depletes without strengthening. I'm not advocating for reckless pain or purposeless hardship. I'm speaking of strategic suffering, intentional challenges, embraced for specific development. The key distinction is this: growth-producing suffering is suffering you choose for a purpose greater than the pain. It's discomfort with direction. It's hardship with a horizon. It's pain with a purpose. When you choose to suffer for something meaningful, when you deliberately embrace difficulty for the sake of development, you transform suffering from your enemy into your ally. It becomes not something happening to you, but something working for you. Not something breaking you down, but something building you up. This is the paradox that most people never discover. The suffering you're willing to embrace becomes the suffering that empowers you. The resistance you're willing to push against becomes the resistance that propels you forward. The weight you're willing to carry becomes the weight that strengthens you. But you must choose it. You must embrace it. You must make yourself suffer purposefully rather than letting suffering make you its victim randomly. There's all the difference in the world between being dragged by suffering and driving suffering toward a destination. What suffering are you avoiding that's necessary for your next level? What difficult conversation? What challenging commitment? What demanding discipline? What uncomfortable change are you postponing that's essential for your development? The tragedy is that many people suffer anyway, but their suffering produces nothing because they haven't aligned it with purpose. They endure pain without progress. They experience hardship without growth. They go through trials without transformation. Why? Because they've never understood that suffering without purpose is just misery. But suffering with purpose is the pathway to mastery. Have you ever watched someone transform their body through discipline, exercise, and nutrition? The process is fascinating. At first, every workout is agony. Every healthy meal feels like deprivation. Their muscles scream in protest. Their cravings demand satisfaction. Everything within them begs for relief, for comfort, for the familiar ease of their previous lifestyle. But they push through. Day after day, they choose the pain of progress over the relief of regression. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, something remarkable happens. The very activities that once caused suffering begin to bring satisfaction. The discipline that felt like punishment starts to feel like power. The choices that seem like sacrifice become sources of strength. This metamorphosis doesn't happen despite the suffering, it happens because of it. The transformation is forged in the furnace of chosen difficulty. And this principle extends far beyond physical fitness. It applies to every dimension of your existence. Your capacity for love deepens when you choose the suffering of vulnerability rather than the safety of emotional distance. Your wisdom expands when you choose the suffering of uncertainty rather than the comfort of premature conclusions. Your leadership grows when you choose the suffering of responsibility rather than the ease of blame. Your creativity flourishes when you choose the suffering of potential failure rather than the security of the proven path. But here's what stops most people. They misinterpret the initial suffering as evidence they're on the wrong path rather than recognizing it as confirmation they're on the path of growth. They feel the resistance and retreat rather than pushing through to transformation. They experience the discomfort and turn back rather than understanding that the discomfort is precisely what's creating their capacity. Think about learning any new skill. At first, it's awkward, uncomfortable, frustrating. Whether it's playing an instrument, speaking a new language, mastering a sport, or developing a professional ability, the beginning is marked by incompetence and discomfort. But if you persist through this phase of suffering, something beautiful emerges on the other side, fluency. Last week, joy in the very activity that once caused distress. The problem is that most people quit during the suffering phase. They interpret difficulty as defeat rather than development. They see struggle as a sign to stop rather than as the essential process of growth. They surrender precisely at the moment when persistence would transform their experience. This pattern repeats across every area of human experience. Marriages fail because couples retreat from the suffering of working through conflict. Careers stagnate because individuals avoid the suffering of leaving their comfort zones. Dreams die because dreamers shy away from the suffering of risk and potential rejection. Potential remains unrealized because the suffering required for its fulfillment seems too great a price. But what if we've been misunderstanding suffering all along? What if it's not the enemy of our fulfillment, but the pathway to it? What if the very things we've been running from are the things that would lead us to what we've been running toward? There's a profound difference between meaningless suffering and transformative suffering. Meaningless suffering has no purpose beyond the pain itself. It leads nowhere, develops nothing, creates no value. But transformative suffering is different. It's suffering with a destination, suffering with design, suffering that's creating something within you that couldn't exist without it. The question isn't whether you'll suffer. The question is whether your suffering will be random and pointless or chosen and productive. Will you suffer the pain of growth or the pain of regret? Will you endure the discomfort of becoming or the misery of remaining stagnant? Every significant achievement in human history emerged through chosen suffering. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every transformation required someone to embrace difficulty rather than avoid it. To persist through pain rather than surrender to comfort. to make themselves suffer purposefully for something greater than ease. The most dangerous lie you can believe is that your path should be easy. That obstacles indicate you're moving in the wrong direction. That resistance means you should retreat. These beliefs will keep you trapped in mediocrity, forever flinching away from the very experiences that would lead to your liberation. I challenge you to reinterpret the difficulties you're facing. What if they're not blocking your path but forming your path? What if they're not hindering your development but are essential to your development? What if the very things you've been praying would go away are the answers to your deeper prayers for growth, for strength, for transformation? Your future self is forged in the fire of present challenges. Your potential is unlocked through purposeful pain. Your destiny is determined by the difficulties you choose to embrace rather than avoid. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your decisions. And the most fundamental decision you face daily is this: will you choose what's comfortable? Or will you choose what causes you to grow? Most people consistently choose comfort over growth and then wonder why they remain stuck. They choose the easy conversation over the necessary one. They choose immediate pleasure over lasting progress. They choose the familiar limitation over the frightening possibility. And with each choice for comfort, they forfeit a piece of their potential. Your life shrinks or expands in direct proportion to the suffering you're willing to embrace. When you run from necessary pain, your world becomes smaller. Your opportunities diminish. Your capabilities atrophy. But when you lean into strategic suffering, when you deliberately choose the difficult path with purpose, your life expands. Your capacity increases. Your influence grows. There's a particular kind of suffering that deserves special attention because it's so commonly avoided yet so essential for transformation. It's the suffering of confronting truth. The pain of seeing yourself as you really are, not as you pretend to be. The discomfort of acknowledging your weaknesses, your failures, your compromises. This form of suffering, the suffering of honest self-examination, is perhaps the most transformative of all. Yet it's the one we most skillfully avoid. We build elaborate defenses against this pain. We blame circumstances for our shortcomings. We compare ourselves to those doing worse to feel better about our mediocrity. We focus on others' flaws to distract from our own. We redefine success to match our current results rather than stretching toward our potential. These strategies may spare us momentary discomfort, but they condemn us to permanent limitation. The beginning of all growth is the willingness to suffer the pain of seeing yourself clearly, to look without flinching at where you've fallen short, to acknowledge where fear has held you back, to recognize where pride has led you astray, to admit where comfort has compromised your calling. This is not suffering for punishment. It's suffering for purification. It's not pain for condemnation, but pain for transformation. When you make yourself suffer the discomfort of honest self-assessment, something remarkable happens. The very weaknesses you've been hiding become the areas of your greatest potential growth. The failures you've been denying become your most valuable teachers. The limitations you've been disguising become clear targets for development. But this process begins with the willingness to suffer the pain of truth. Another form of suffering we desperately try to avoid is the suffering of discipline. The pain of saying no to what feels good in the moment for the sake of what will produce good in the future. The discomfort of consistent effort when excitement has faded. The challenge of showing up day after day when results aren't yet visible. Discipline always feels like suffering initially. It feels like restriction, like limitation, like unnecessary hardship. But those who embrace this form of suffering discover something profound. Discipline doesn't diminish freedom, it creates it. The suffering of discipline leads to the liberation of mastery. The pain of structured effort produces the pleasure of expanded capability. The discomfort of consistent practice results in the ease of habitual excellence. Look at the areas of your life where you've been unwilling to suffer the pain of discipline. Where have you been choosing momentary comfort over lasting capability? Where have you been surrendering long-term goals for short-term relief? Where have you been avoiding the suffering of structure, routine, practice, and perseverance? The path to your highest potential will never feel comfortable. It will always require you to embrace forms of suffering that others avoid. It will demand that you push when others retreat, that you persist when others surrender, that you face what others flee. But there's something crucial to understand. The suffering you choose today determines the suffering you'll experience tomorrow. When you avoid the suffering of discipline, you guarantee the suffering of regret. When you escape the suffering of risk, you ensure the suffering of unrealized potential. When you evade the suffering of responsibility, you secure the suffering of limitation. Choose your suffering wisely, for you will suffer either way. But one path leads to transformation, while the other leads to stagnation. One creates growth, the other guarantees regret. There comes a moment in every transformative journey when suffering changes form. What once felt like punishment begins to feel like privilege. What started as burden transforms into blessing. The very difficulties that once made you question your path become the reasons you're grateful for it. This metamorphosis doesn't happen by avoiding suffering, but by advancing through it with purpose. The fire that threatens to destroy you can instead refine you if you understand its purpose. The pressure that feels like it might crush you can instead create something beautiful if you embrace it with perspective. The resistance that seems to be blocking your progress can actually be building your power if you push against it consistently. The most profound truth about purposeful suffering is this: it doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes you. It transforms not just what you can do, but who you are. It develops not just your skills, but your character. It expands not just your opportunities, but your capacity to make the most of them. You were designed to grow through challenge. Your mind is built to expand through problems. Your heart is constructed to deepen through trials. Your spirit is made to strengthen through tests. Every dimension of your being is created with this remarkable ability to transform difficulty into development. So today, make a decision that might change everything. Stop running from what's hard. Stop avoiding what's uncomfortable. Stop escaping what's challenging. Instead, lean into it. Embrace it. Use it. Let the very things that could break you become the things that make you unbreakable. Choose the suffering of excellence over the comfort of mediocrity. Choose the pain of growth over the ease of stagnation. Choose the discomfort of truth over the relief of denial. Choose the challenge of responsibility over the simplicity of blame. Your greatest contributions, your deepest joys, your most profound fulfillment lie on the other side of purposeful suffering. They're waiting for you beyond the challenges you've been avoiding, beyond the discomfort you've been escaping, beyond the resistance you've been fleeing. Make yourself suffer not randomly, but purposefully, not destructively, but developmentally. Not as punishment, but as preparation for your purpose. The butterfly must struggle from the cocoon to fly. The seed must burst to grow. The muscle must tear to strengthen. And you must embrace necessary suffering to become all you were created to be. Your future self is calling you forward, inviting you to endure the temporary pain that leads to permanent transformation. Will you answer that call? Will you choose that path? Will you make yourself suffer for the sake of becoming? The choice is yours. And that choice will determine everything.